Welcome to the Parenting with Confidence podcast. I am your host, Teresa Alexander Inman, board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. Today, I would like to welcome Mr. Isaiah Cruz. Isaiah is a board certified psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner who specializes in addiction medicine. He has experience with depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, heroin addiction, cocaine, meth, food, and porn addictions. You have a tough job, my friend.
Yes. So I've been doing addiction medicine for about the last six years or so, and it started with like opiate addiction because that's pretty prevalent, and more recently transitioned to alcohol and pornography addiction. And it's I call it the hidden epidemic because you'd be astounded how many people watch pornography on a regular basis and don't realize that how much of a hold it has on them.
Yeah, it is so true. And like you said, it's hidden because I remember years ago, I I went to visit a colleague and we were about to do some exercising, when beach bodies was really like, in the early stages.
Mm-hmm.
So we put in beach body as opposed to beach bodies or one of them.
Right.
What came up? And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah. You got to be careful. Yeah, definitely.
I thought, wow, I didn't realize how, and I guess I've heard that they've made it really easy. So common misspellings lead to porn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what kind of dangers are children in with something like that? Because they're not going to always spell. I mean, I misspelled this site.
Yeah.
What about our children?
Yeah, absolutely. So the average age of first exposure to pornography is 11 years old. And by age 14, 94% of children will have been exposed to porn. And like you said, oftentimes it's innocent. They misspell something or just curious. They heard a word and they're just curious about it. So they Google it and come to find out it leads them down to a wrong path. So that's a danger in itself because the kids aren't, as you know, your developmental specialists, they're not prepared to handle the type of dopamine release and the type of things that are involved in pornography. I always say when I was a kid, pornography was the Playboy magazine of a topless woman.
Yeah.
And we didn't have access to it. You would go, we went to my friend's uncle's house and found like a pornography under like the kitchen or the bathroom sink or something like that. And it would be like 6 months before we would go back or something like that. And that would be the highlight, or not the height of pornography exposure for when I was a kid. But that's a lot different now to compared to what kids are doing now. Like a topless woman, yeah, it is pornography. And yes, children shouldn't be exposed to that. But that's nothing compared to what they're being exposed to now. They have unlimited access to the most hardcore porn there is. And these pornography websites, they don't have age verifications. So it can do it. You can just like click, yes, I'm 18. That's it. That's the only verification they have. So as a part of our campaign, I treat pornography addiction, but also one of my long-term goals is to help solve that problem. So I'm a nurse practitioner. I believe, you can't quote me on this, but I believe it's Under Armour who gives a nurse's discount for their website. But in order to do it, you have to go to id.me, put in your name, driver's license, nursing license, do all of this stuff to get a code to get 5% off at Under Armour. Like, why can't they do that at adult websites to verify who's watching that? And that's going to protect the children so much more.
Yes. Is there a way that we can petition that, for legislation?
Yes. Yeah, there's a country in UK that has successfully made that a law, that they have age verification before entering an adult website. So it is possible, and I believe there are some people already working on that, but I'm definitely gonna do my best to support that because that's a must.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, if there's anything I can do, because like I told you, I worked at a center, Department of Juvenile Justice facility. It was a maximum security facility for juveniles. And so part of the one section was for serious offenders, like children who had murdered people and all of that. And then the other section was a sex offender unit. And through working there, we found that some of the children who were in the program had been exposed to porn when they were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I thought, oh my Lord. And then they perpetrated sexual offenses, one on a baby. I think he was 7 and he did this to a baby. And but I think when we got him, he was like, I think he might have been the youngest, maybe 9 or 10 years old.
Right.
When he came to the facility. And I thought, he himself is a baby. And, this exposure to porn, has rewired his brain. And here he is now facing serious charges.
So oftentimes I that's not the first time I've heard stories like that. I was my wife and I did foster care. We had for about 6 years, had about 15 different kids come through our home. And as a part of the training for that, you hear all kinds of stories, and it's very good educational stuff. But I told you the average age of first exposure is 11. But get this, the 1/3 of all pornography consumed by pediatrics is consumed by children under 10. So that's, I'm sorry, I said 1/3, it's 1/5, 20%. 20% of all pornography consumed by pediatrics are under 10. So that's like 7, 8, 9-year-olds. And that's just, it's phenomenal. People, it blows, just mind blowing.
It is. It's horrifying, really, when you think about it. Then what happens? So what's the effect of early exposure on a child's brain?
There's a lot of different aspects. So just like with any addiction, you do that activity, your brain releases dopamine. Every time dopamine is released, your brain creates a new pathway to think about doing that activity again because it liked it. Well, doing that hundreds of times and even thousands of times rewires your brain to be more impulsive, but it becomes a compulsion. So CAT scan of the brain, a CAT scan of an addict's brain, they physically look different because of this rewiring that takes place. That's one. And because of the prolonged exposure to dopamine, there's something called dopamine downregulation. So your brain's not made to operate in a high dopamine section all the time, right? So you're constantly being bombarded with dopamine. Your brain says, this is too much. So what it does is starts turning off dopamine receptors. So to help reduce the amount of dopamine absorbed. Well, it reduces your overall dopamine intake, makes you more depressed. So as a result, it directly leads to depression. And then you have the tolerance aspect. So your brain is used to high bursts of dopamine via pornography. Well, what happens when you go hug a family member? You're supposed to get dopamine from that. But if the dopamine from hugging a family member is minuscule compared to how much that comes out of porn, you don't enjoy life as much. The pleasurable, healthy parts of life that you're supposed to enjoy is less meaningful because of it. So that's like the brain activity behind it. Then you have the social aspect of it, the shame and the guilt behind it. Because I was exposed to porn at 10 years old. And I remember it vividly because it did kind of change my life. I knew it was wrong. I didn't know why, but at 10 years old, I knew deep inside me, I should not be doing this. But I was a 10-year-old boy and I liked it. So I was like, right. So, but if somebody would have told me, this is why I tell parents, define pornography for your kids. Yes. Because they don't have the words for it. They don't have a vocabulary to define what pornography is. So define it for them and then tell them what to expect, like what you expect out of them when they are exposed. I expect you to define it, turn around and come tell me about it. And make sure there's no shame involved. Make sure the parent doesn't get angry because the kid will realize, okay, I can't trust them now because you flipped out because they were exposed to porn at the neighbor's house. Now you flipped out and called the neighbor's parents. Well, that just tells the kid that you can't be trusted now with that type of information. And oftentimes I'll tell parents to talk to your kids, debrief them because, okay, I'm sorry that you were exposed to that. How did that make you feel? What was going on? Did your tummy get upset? Like it was like something in your chest just oftentimes that's like something in my chest just didn't feel right.
Mm,
And that's your conscious that's telling you you don't know that you deep down inside your body knows that this is not okay to do, and it's your body's way of telling you that, and listen to that feeling. So then there's this going back to the shame and guilt behind pornography, that shame and guilt leads to depression, social isolation, loneliness, and then sexual expectation. Much like what you talked about before, a lot of teenagers supplement their sexual education with pornography, and
mm,
you and I know that that's not realistic. They're called porn actresses and actors for a reason,
mhm.
because it's not real, and it's nor is it supposed to be. So 9 out of 10 pornography videos has aggression or violence towards women. So it's teaching young women that it's okay to have an aggressor,
Mhm.
or some type of violence, and it's teaching young boys that women like the violence and aggression, and that's just not okay.
Wow, it's just all negative, and I'm just hoping because I remember once, speaking to one of the young men in the program, and he watched it with his uncle. And the uncle said to him, come on, you got, like this is so you learn. And I'm like, he's
Right.
6. He didn't need to learn that then.
Right.
And again, later it became a problem. And I mean, there were some more horrifying situations that I wouldn't even go into right now because I don't want anybody judging anybody. Because again, everybody operates, I believe, to the best of their abilities.
Mhm.
And because you can't love somebody and then expose them to something like that unless you thought it would do them good. I'm just hoping, I'm going
Right.
to look through rose-colored glasses right now and stay
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just really sad that, and I think too, it's not looked as a serious offense. I
Right.
think in some ways they think it's benign. Like, how common is it to see a woman's breasts on TV now?
Yeah. Very, very. I was doing a podcast with somebody, and he told me, Isaiah, there's nothing wrong with porn. I watch porn, and I said, okay, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to say porn is bad or porn is good. I can give you some objective data and let you make that decision. So and this is what I told him. I said, pornography is the third most common form of sex trafficking in the United States, according to the Human National Trafficking Hotline. So that means some of the people you watch on pornography videos aren't willingly there. And
Right.
how does that make you feel? And of course, this gentleman, we changed the subject shortly after because that's pretty uncomfortable to face that fact. And so there are some objective data. And like, to reiterate, I'm not here to judge anyone or tell you porn is bad. But before you consume porn, consider all aspects of it. And if you still want to consume porn, great. It doesn't bother me. So there are some, like I said, there's some objectively things that people should know before they consume. That, like I said before, there's a lot of violence towards women
Yeah.
in pornography. And
Wow.
then there's a sex trafficking, human trafficking, things like that. And then how pornography leads to depression, things like that. So
Mhm.
there's some things to consider before a person consumes porn.
Absolutely. And honestly, I had no idea. Like, I mean, you're just breaking it down so nicely for me because I didn't know, even though I worked in a sex offender unit, I had no clue that, with and I get the sex trafficking. I also worked in domestic violence. That part I understand. But, the depression, just the fact that, again, just allowing people to define things and then make a decision. But I don't think a child should
Right.
have to make that
Oh,
decision,
absolutely. No,
you know.
no, no.
So, and I really like what you said about, debriefing with the child as opposed to shaming them because the act has already happened.
Right.
And it makes no sense to go down that hole and make them feel badly. And, you made a really good point. It leads to distrust. And I think that's a really, if people take nothing away, But that from this, I think, this has been successful. I'd say that.
Yeah, yeah,
Because,
yeah.
yeah.
So most people say, Isaiah, how do I protect my kids from pornography? And it's hard to answer that question. There's a good chance you can't.
Right.
So 94% of kids are exposed by 14. I believe the numbers are higher by 18. It's closer to like 98%. But so what do you do? There's a storm coming. You grab an umbrella. All right. So we got to prepare our kids in case they are exposed.
Mm.
And talk to, like I said before, talk to them ahead of time. Give them the vocabulary they need to express what they feel and what they've seen. For younger kids, there's a good book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It kind of defines pornography in a way for kids, 5, 6, 7, 8, to and who to that they can understand. And there's an older version of the big Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. You can go on Amazon, how they give you referrals to different books, you'll find it.
Right.
But of course, internet blockers and
Mhm,
or accountability software. So as the kids are younger, internet blockers are good.
mhm,
Kids, teenagers, mid-teenagers, I recommend accountability software. The difference is the internet blockers do just that.
mhm.
Block out adult censors, adult material. The accountability software allows the children, or allows anybody to go to any site, but it emails a certain contacts that you put in when there are questionable websites that are accessed.
Oh.
And there's a little bit of reasoning behind this. Is you want to give the children enough rope to hang themselves, so to speak,
Mhm.
while you still have sway over them, while you
Right.
still have some type of input in their life. Because if you wait till they're 18, they're going to go off to college, go off to live with a roommate, and they'll have uninterrupted access to porn, and you won't see them for 3 months.
Right.
And that's not doing the best job in preparing them on how to handle the unlimited access that the internet offers. So those are some of my suggestions. There's all kinds of internet blockers. Google has one. See, Circle by Disney, and then the Bark for children, bark.us, and Covenant Eyes. Those last two are like more of accountability software. So
Okay. I'm gonna write that down.
yeah,
So, Covenant Eyes.
yeah, Covenant Eyes. That one is a faith-based one, but regardless of your faith or lack thereof, you can still use it.
Mhm.
And
And you said bark.us and
yes, and then Circle, meetcircle.com is one, and then the last one will be cleanbrowsing.org.
okay, so they are blockers, these.
So the clean browsing, Meet Circle are I forget. I'm not a huge computer guy, but they block it from the IP address. So
Okay.
anybody on your internet doesn't have access. Bark, they're a blocker, and they do have mobile apps, so you can protect your kids' phones. And
Okay.
likewise, and then Covenant Eyes is the accountability software, and they do have also mobile apps, so you can protect the phones as well.
Wow. See, okay, so I've heard of blockers, but I've never heard
Mhm.
of accountability software. So that's a new one for me. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome.
Yeah. And it makes sense because you want to start from a place of trust.
Mhm.
And when that's violated, then you can have a conversation.
Right. Yeah. And realistically, I have some blockers on my computer. Well, because I have young kids, it's
Mhm.
hard for me to do research on pornography.
Yeah.
I keep getting blocked. So there are, I mean, nothing's foolproof. And some of these blockers are going to block legitimate sites that have nothing to do with adult content, or, especially I work in the medical field. So some of the stuff are legit medical reasons why I need to access things, and it blocks it. So there is some downsides to it, but the benefits definitely outweigh the downsides.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Now, what do you do when a young child is addicted to porn? A 14-year-old, say, is addicted to porn. Like, what can be done to help him or her?
A good question. So therapy is the gold standard. Therapy. So you have to find somebody who is one, good with kids, and two,
Yeah.
has experience with addictions and shame based therapy, because there's so much shame surrounding this. So
Mhm.
chances are the parents caught them and they don't want to be there, and so you really need to find a good therapist who can navigate that. So there is no easy fix. We're gonna have to undo a lot of stuff, but it does get better. The
Mhm.
brain does heal itself. Kind of talked before that the repeated exposure to high amounts of dopamine, it does change the brain. And and it takes about, depending on the circumstances, it can take 6 months up to 2 years for your brain to destroy all those old pathways and create new healthy pathways. So get a internet blocker, and get into counseling, and have there's support groups. There's like Sexaholics Anonymous. There's
Mhm.
a lot of different aspects. So what I do, I've been treating alcohol addiction for quite some time, and how I got into porn is over the course of about 1 month. I'm sorry, I got into porn. I got into treating porn addiction.
Right. I understood that,
I
but
know, but it's still kind of funny. So over the course of about a month, I had about 4 or 5 guys tell me I'm no for their refill for medication assisted treatment regarding alcohol. I no longer take this for alcohol. This medication keeps me away from porn. And I
wow.
thought, huh, like that's pretty brave of the person. That was my first thought. That's pretty brave. Like
Yes.
society frowns on porn addiction so much. I personally would rather say I'm an alcoholic than a porn addict, right?
Right.
Because there's just so much stigma with the porn addict. You're kind of a perv. So I started researching some medical journals, and sure enough, there's been medical studies done on several different medications. The two that we prescribe, naltrexone, and it is used to treat opiate and alcohol addiction. And how it works for pornography is it interrupts the reward system in your brain.
Mhm.
So it limits the endorphin release from external stimuli. And how that works for porn is kind of like the Pavlovian response. I open my computer for work, and my brain says computer porn, and it automatically starts releasing dopamine because it knows
Mhm.
what's coming, just like the
Right.
Pavlovian dog experiment. Uh, so it helps to stop that before that snowball gets going, and it has some really decent success rates. And then the second one would be an SSRI, like citalopram or Zoloft. Standard antidepressants, extremely common. But almost 15% of the population is on an antidepressant.
Mhm.
If you know anything about it, most common side effect is sexual dysfunction,
Right.
decreased libido, inability to orgasm. Those are all like major side effects of antidepressants. So in these medical studies, they kind of took that and used it as their advantage, like for people with sex addictions. And it shows definitely some positive results in treating internet sex addiction, pornography addiction. So so I started researching, where can I send my patients? And I started screening for pornography because I was treating only alcohol. Like, okay, on your intake, let's talk about pornography. How often you use it? You find it's a problem. You'll be surprised on how many people like, yes, I think it is a problem. I've tried to stop and I couldn't.
Mhm.
So then I couldn't find anybody who would prescribe this medication. So obviously, I locally in my private practice, I started prescribing it.
Mhm.
And then a colleague of mine, we were talking, and we decided that this is such a huge problem. We need to help as many people as we can. So we partnered with a third-party telemedicine agency to provide telemedicine in all 50 states. So that's what we're doing. We have access to both of these medications in all 50 states. Uh, Unfortunately, it's so hard treating pediatrics
Yeah.
because of liability and malpractice insurance and everything. So right now we're only treating 18 and up. So eventually I do want to, do 16 and up or 14 and up, something like that. But so we only do the medication aspect of it,
Mhm.
mostly because that's what's missing. You can Google and find a telemedicine therapist for sex addiction, fairly simple, or even a local one. And that there's a huge need out there for it, as far as there's enough of them out there, but there is nobody who even's prescribing this. And if you go to your family doctor and say, hey, I have a problem with pornography, they're going to send you to a therapist. They're not even going to know about this medication because it's not commonly known about. So that's kind of how my story on how I got started doing what we do.
Wow. And like I said, that is such important work, especially in today's day where it's just this stuff is just so readily available. Like you said before, it's not like, Playboy that you got, you saw when you went to someone's house.
Right.
And, gosh, it's just everywhere now. It's so pervasive. And I don't think up until recently that the effects, like, finding out how all this affects the rewiring or the wiring of one's brain. Like that research wasn't done. So people just went about thinking, oh, it's not a big deal. But now we have science behind it. There's proof to show the long-term effects of this. So it's pretty scary.
Yeah. So you were talking about the popularity of pornography. It's often called the 3 A's: affordability, anonymity, and what's the other one? I can't think. Think of the other one now. Affordability, anonymity, and accessibility. Those three make kind of the perfect storm. I believe there was a study in 2015 comparing the dopamine release from cocaine and from pornography, and they were similar, those changes. And then they did brain imaging studies of those patients who were addicted to each of those. Those changes in the brain were very similar. And then this study, the people conducting the study, it kind of made a shocking announcement, and they said pornography is more addictive than cocaine, and they went out and said it because the changes in the brain are so similar. But the affordability, accessibility, and anonymity of porn is so perfect, makes the perfect storm, that it's free. You don't have to tell anybody. That's and right. It's there all the time.
That's it. You can engage in it as often as you want. So of course, which increases the dopamine, which sadly will increase all the other things like depression and all of that. So
and with substance use, whether it be alcohol or cocaine, there's signs. There's outwardly signs. Your loved ones are going to notice something eventually. They're going to see you at the liquor store or notice you're slurring your words or something. But with pornography, by the time you notice the side effects, it's too late. Like the damage is done. Not to say it's too late, but the damage is done, and and it's pretty severe at that time.
Wow. Whew. Well, Mr. Isaiah Cruz, thank you so much for being here today and sharing all this important information. Now, if there is one thing you want people to leave this moment with, what would that be?
Have a talk with your kids. And first thing people say is it's going to be awkward. Yeah. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. If you just say this is what we're going to talk about, name the body parts, the biological and anatomical parts of the body. You give your kids the vocabulary, have those talks, because if you don't talk to them, they're going to learn it from somewhere else. Kids are smart. And the internet, if you have a question, the internet will answer it, and the kids know that, and they're going to Google, and they're going to find stuff that you don't want them finding. So just bite the bullet and talk to your kids.
Wow. And that is the key to so much that, it's a protective factor for children, just getting comfortable talking to your children about the things that are, or you might find uncomfortable, because that saves them in the long run. It
is. Yeah. And it may be uncomfortable the first couple of times, but it sends a couple messages to your kids. One, that you love them. And two, it's okay to talk about uncomfortable things.
Yes, because they too will have children, or may have children one day.
Well, they might have some uncomfortable conversations for you, and not sure if they're allowed to ask. But if you bring up uncomfortable topics, they're going to say, okay, we're in this family, we're allowed to talk about things that are uncomfortable. So I'm going to ask mom or dad next time something uncomfortable happens.
Wow. And that just up levels the trust too, doesn't it? When they're able to do that. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, sir. I really appreciate you and all that you've offered us today.
Yeah. So if anybody has questions about what I do, on my website, nox.net, about our story section, you can book a free 10-minute video visit, audio visit with myself. and we can talk about pornography treatments, what we do, medications. It's no-x.net.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Are you on social media at all, or?
Yeah, on Facebook and Instagram. Yes, no X Telemed is what it. You'll be able to find us, and I can send you the stuff to put on your podcast.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Because I mean, as we need to get it out there as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for spending the time to be here. Actually, before all this, I was just like, oh Lord, I hope we have power when this happens, because I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. And
Okay.
I don't know if you know that
Yeah.
Ian, or I think that's his name,
Yeah.
is, about somewhere, but we've been really blessed today. It's very quiet. I don't know if things are gonna stir up later, but it's been wonderful. So
Good. Well, good. I'm glad you're safe.
yeah, thank you. All righty. So be well, sir. I wish you and your family well, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All righty.